Today's guest is Adrian Nathaniel, and Adrian can be described as an edge walker, journeying between worlds to build bridges that connect them. His academic roots lie in psychology, and he has a generous sprinkle of travel and cultural immersion to add flavor to his perspectives. Adrian has unearthed legends and myths from various cultures, exploring how historical figures have instigated real, tangible change by merging mythology with their inner life's narrative. He's walked the entrepreneurial path, engaging in purpose-driven ventures, from empowering disadvantaged youth to facilitating ethical investment. Adrian's committed to uniting consciousness, community, integrity, and commerce so the planet can thrive in harmony. Welcome, Adrian.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Ash. It's great to be here.
Yeah, wonderful to have you here. And so I always think about, with this podcast, right, I always think about having a long sort of get to know you piece, and then we go into the turning point. But what I found is if we just jump off into the turning point, it creates the foundation for the interview. So is that okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so you shared with me some of your writing, and the piece was around being at the Bangalore markets, reading tarot cards for people. So do you want to elaborate on that turning point?
Sure. Okay, so I had just recently deferred my degree in psychology, and yeah, it wasn't fulfilling me. It was I I started studying psychology with the idea that I wanted to learn more about human potential, but it just wasn't giving me that at all. So after 3 years, I deferred, and then when I uh, my first day off the new year, I went into Brisbane City. Um, no fixed destination. Got off the bus, and as soon as I got off the bus, I saw this sort of new agey type store in front of me, and I walked in, got to talking to the guy, which was fascinating. He started talking about how group souls travel through time together. Something about that really fascinated me and resonated with me. And then out of the back room walks this young guy who starts talking to me about tarot cards and shows me his deck and something clicked in me right then. I thought, oh, this is really fascinating. I could see how the tarot cards were actually the imagery on the tarot cards were providing a direct communication to one's subconscious, because what I was learning in psychology through Jungian psychology was that that's the language of the subconscious, is the imagery, symbology. And so I thought, okay, great, I'll start learning tarot cards, and I'll call myself an intuitive counselor, because I didn't have a psychic bone in my body, but I believe that by tuning in, or allowing the other person to be able to choose particular cards, and that allowed that sort of bypassed their conscious mind and allowed their subconscious to start talking to me. And all I had to do was interpret these symbols on these cards. And so yeah, that was working, and I really enjoyed it. And I was going around different markets doing this, and um yeah, it was interesting. I remember um totally giving up everything in Brisbane and just living in my car around Byron, as you do. And and I was just turned up at the Bangalore markets one day, set up my little site, and sat down, and yeah, waiting for people to turn up. And then yeah, this one guy came down, sat down in front of me. I can still see it clearly to this day. Blonde hair, blue eyes, but like dreads, and he just looked at me straight in the eye and he said, "Who are you?" and I smiled. I said, I'm a tarot card reader.
Hmm.
And and he said, who are you? And then I thought, maybe he wants to know my name. And at that point, I as everyone was doing around Byron, they had these different names. So I thought I'd call myself Maya. Thought it was pretty cool. Maya means illusion. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's a pretty cool name. So I said, oh, my name's Maya. And he laughed. He says, nah, who are you? And yeah, that sort of got me a little bit. And I started to just say a few different traits, skills, attributes, just trying to work out what he was wanting and and actually, yeah, how do I describe who I am? Anyway, um, he he invited me back to his teepee um, that night to have a meal with him. Like, yeah, okay, cool. Somewhere to stay tonight. I'll go there. And and then he later that night he proceeded to, you know, deeply inquire into me through his poetry. Actually, by the end of the night, I had I decided to completely renounce everything who I thought I was. So I completely gave up tarot card reading. And by the end of the night, he said to me, you know, I think you need to go to the land of the gods. And I was like, oh, cool. That sounds great. Where's that? And he said, India. And I was like, great. All right, cool. I'm going there. But how do I get there? And anyway, so that led to the next part of my journey.
Wow. And so you were still not clear on who you were after spending time with him, or you knew who
Yeah,
you
correct.
weren't?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I no, I it was more of a drawing pull towards knowing who I really am. Who am I? So I and there was a a word that sort of a mantra that was guiding me. It was truth. I want to know the truth of who I am. And so yeah, that sort of guided me around. But before I got to India, I I felt drawn to visit sacred places, and that's what sort of led me to different parts of Australia, and it was that was actually an integral part of the next part of my journey. Is as I was going to these different sacred places, I realized that they actually had story, a legend, or a myth, and and I became fascinated with these and and started collecting them as I was going to these different places and honoring these sacred places. And and then I became aware, or I don't know how I became aware. I think I read it or was told it that that when the indigenous gather on these sacred places at the right time with the right people, that everything thrives, everything prospers. The wildlife, the the plants, and that really fascinated me too. But yeah, so that sort of led me um, around to, you know, India. Actually, the next step I was as I went to India, I was like, oh, I want to visit sacred places and find out the story of these sacred places, and that sort of guided my travel. And when I went to India, found myself um, a little bit isolated from other travelers. I went traveling by myself, and I I was more on a pilgrimage, I guess, whereas others I noticed were just, you know, having a party or just, enjoying traveling. I felt driven on a mission to
Mm,
to go to these sacred places, and yeah, that led on a whole journey.
mm. So you're studying psychology, then you took a step into tarot cards and the supernatural slash subconscious world, and then you took a really deep dive into a TP. And then I love the idea that you're walking around India on a pilgrimage.
Yeah, so I didn't know where to go, so I started asking people, well, where are some sacred places to go? And that's when I discovered this sacred place in the north of India, in Kashmir. Actually, it's uh, it's a natural um, Shiva ice lingam. It high up in the Himalayas. It's a naturally formed lingam made of ice that's dripped, and it became a really important pilgrimage place.
Mm,
And so I thought, I'll go there. And fortunately, around that time, this was back in 1994, the it had been Kashmir had been closed for a period of time to tourists, but in 1994 it was reopened again. I thought, perfect, I'm meant to go there.
mm,
And so I landed in Srinagar, and about within 24 hours, a couple of English people got kidnapped by terrorists on that very trek that I was planning on doing. So that was all closed down. And then an assassination happened in Srinagar, and the whole place was shut down. And I could hear machine guns going off in the distance. What is
mm,
going on? And I got a map, because yeah, back then there was no such thing as Google Maps or anything. So I bought a map, and I thought, right, I still want to try and get to this place. How do I get there? And so I discovered that, yeah, if I catch a bus, I could get around the other side of the mountain, and then track up that way. So that's what I did. Bought a bus and went around the other side of the mountain. And yeah, at that time it was about June, so the buses would only go a certain distance because the roads were still closed further up in the Himalayas. So that just so happened to be the last stop of this bus, and got off, and then I realized that I was completely underprepared. I didn't realize how much underprepared I was, but I at the time I I was like, I didn't want to be like a typical tourist either. So I had this canvas and I thought, okay, I'm going to carry everything in it. And it was about 25 kilograms that I
mm.
was trying to carry. And it had kerosene cooker and all my food. I didn't realize till afterwards that uh, you need pressure cooker up there, because at that altitude, water boils at 60 degrees, and it takes hours to cook anything. So yeah, it was really underprepared.
Wow, I
And I
didn't
thought,
know
okay,
that. I didn't know that it would
yeah,
be so low. That I knew that it changed with altitude, but I didn't realize it was that low.
yeah, I was pretty much in survival
Mm,
during that time up there. And I also made my own boots, and so I wanted to feel the earth under me.
mm,
Well, after 3 weeks of walking through the Himalayas, I was over feeling the earth underneath my feet
yeah.
with moccasins. But yeah, that was another turning point actually.
Mm,
I was there. I had a mission to climb this mountain, Mount Amarnath. It's 5,000 meters high. Put on this backpack and thought, "Nah, I can't do that." And so I looked around and thought, okay, well, I'll continue walking that way then. And it was this track was led me to the Zanskar Valley, and that wasn't on my plan. It was just a turning point, and it was one of those moments that completely changed, I guess, my journey, that particular journey, and my journey through life. And I'm sure that I was meant to make that decision and to continue on that journey, because what happened 3 weeks later on that journey is I ended up in this Kala Chakra initiation by the Dalai Lama, and I had no idea that was going to happen.
So you
Didn't even
ended up
know
with
what
the
a
Dalai
Kala Chakra.
Lama.
Yeah, yeah. I was walking through entire villages that were just empty, and then I saw them on the trail, and I would ask, I said, "Where are you going?" And they would say, "Oh, Dalai Lama, Dalai Lama." Oh, okay, cool. And then when I remember crossing over the last big pass, 5,000 meters high, and coming down into this valley, and there were like it felt like hundreds of thousands of people there in all pilgrims, um, devotees of the Dalai Lama, there gathering for this special initiation. Wow, this is oh, I wonder what this initiation is.
This is
I had
amazing.
had I had no idea what it
Mm,
was, but I felt like, yeah, I might as well be in it.
mm.
And it was all done in another language, by the way. But essentially, if you can imagine this, like there was this little gompa that had been recently built, and that was what the ceremony was about. Was about opening this new gompa,
What's a
and
gompa?
it's like a Tibetan monastery,
Hmm.
and then there was on on the veranda of this gompa there was this huge mandala, this image of the Kala chakra, because it's the Kala chakra is also depicted in this mandala, and in the middle of this mandala was a deity, uh, the Kala chakra deity, which looked very much like Shiva, and it was there with this deity was his consort, and they were in union, and so that blew me away, and it was a bit weird because I thought, this is Tibet and Buddhism, and yet there's looks like Shiva
Mm.
there in the middle of this mandala, and then yeah, the Dalai Lama proceeded to take all of us into this mandala on a journey to meet this deity. That was my understanding. It was all done in Tibetan, so I had no idea what was going on, but I was going on my own journey to meet the deity as well.
Mm.
And yeah, that was pretty powerful. I actually walked away from there a bit not knowing what happened, and yet the seeds that were planted at that time in that ceremony have continued to sort of and very slowly um, blossom and sprout. And it's only like in 2020, I actually decided to redo the Kala Chakra initiation. And I started, felt drawn to read more about it. And I did it this time with more awareness that was done in English. And yeah, it's pretty incredible. there's a lot of synchronicities
Mm.
happening there with that. That yeah, synchronicity. That I love that word. And synchronicity is actually a word that was term coined by Jung, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
the, who I believe is one of the fathers of mythology.
Mm.
And actually, there is a mythology behind the color chakra, and it is about Shambhala, the the promised land in a way, the paradise where everyone and everything live in harmony. And yeah, and it's something that that I was actually um, sort of looking for at that time, way back in 1994, as I was walking through Tibet. Well, I didn't realize the connection there between the Kala Chakra initiation and Shambhala. Yeah, there's anyway. Um, all of this, I've decided I'm going to put into a book, and yeah, so I can share this story uh, with more people, and perhaps yeah, there's it's this this story. I'm going to share it as more of a fiction. It's because I love the capacity of story to to be able to um, give us unique insights no matter where we are on our own journey. But you know, there's a way of story being able to really communicate directly to us, to me, and my own journey, and that's the power of story. And so I thought, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll put what my experiences into a story, so that yeah, no matter who reads it, wherever they're at, they might be able to. It might be able to connect with them wherever they're at in their path.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And just reflecting on my own interpretation of the story you just told, and the bit that really resonated for me was the synchronicity of you walking and arriving at that point by walking and just following guidance and not rushing, just going, oh well, I'll just go this way and I'll go that way. And it wasn't that you had this, oh, the Dalai Lama's here, I'm going to drive this physical body to there. I'm just going to follow what's in front of me and what's coming and take it step by step, and miraculously ended up in front of the Dalai Lama.
Yeah, 100%. And that's it. I I I think um, it's so much more powerful when we do connect in that way to our own journey. You know, that's how we connect with our own purpose. You know, we each have our own gifts and skills, and and to find our purpose, that is, I think that's one of um, the reasons for being on this planet, is for each of us to find that our ikigai,
Mm.
as the Japanese call it. And in fact, I was watching this Netflix series about um, centenarians around the world, people living over age 100 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a key component to some of the people there. They said their reason for being, having a purpose, has allowed them to live a long, happy life.
Yeah, I love the idea that, when we're young, we have high physical energy. And as we get older, that level of physical energy starts to drop. But what can compensate is spiritual energy. And that when we feel alive, then we have more energy. And so they can still be balanced. And you see people in their 70s or 80s, 90s that are still really vibrant. And then you see other people, even much younger too, that aren't really, that they've lost the vitality for life.
And I think a big part of that is the loss of connection to self.
Mm,
Who am I?
mm.
What's my place in this world?
Do you think that purpose for some people for their life is just simply looking for the purpose?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I'd spent a large part of my 20s, on that mission, find out who I was.
Mm,
I, I, I definitely am a big advocate for a gap year, you know, um, after high school, taking some time out, get to know who you are and your place in this world. And the 20s was that for me. I'm a late bloomer, as they say, but I see that with a lot of young men too, in particular, um, particularly my nephew.
mm-hmm.
Just not really sure who he is, feeling a bit depressed,
Mm,
and I really encourage these young men to go on a journey, go on a vision quest, find out who you are,
mm.
and yeah,
Yeah, it's powerful to know who you are.
I
Mm,
still don't know who I am. That's still unfolding.
mm,
It's but I'm loving the journey as it unfolds,
yeah.
and and I remember in one of David Deida books, The Way of the Superior Man, he speaks about the importance of purpose for the masculine, but it's also like an onion, layers of an onion. You might think, well, I'll speak from myself. I thought I had a particular purpose, and you've known me during this period too, where I was running programs for kids, and then that sort of unfolded, and then I was running a farmers market, and that sort of unfolded. Yeah, I think it's really important to connect with that, but it's not fixed. Definitely isn't fixed. It's something that naturally unfolds, and I've often had people wonder, you went from psychology to running kids programs to um, farmers market, financial planning. Who are you?
Mhm.
What are, it's, but there is a thread that runs through all of that.
Mm. Yeah, I'm reflecting on myself and feeling I don't know who I am, but I can sense who I am. And the outside world can shift and change it, but and in there I'm playing roles. And it's like, okay, there's this sense of who I am. And today this who I am is doing a podcast. Right. Tomorrow it's working with clients, it's going to the beach, and there's these roles that I play, but in there is the sense of who I am. And I think sometimes people get mixed up with knowing who they are is connected to what they're doing, if that makes sense.
100%. 100%. That's it. That's it. And and this is one of the things in the Indian philosophies is going beyond all that doing and connecting with the self that is present from the very beginning when we're born right through, that there is an unchanging part of ourselves, something that is always there. Sometimes they call it the witness or the self, and it's that being part of us that is just present, and we can come back to it. I love moments where of where it does feel like synchronicity, where it feels like, here I am again. Here I am.
Mm.
And I'm just observing myself and what's happening in that moment. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. I'm curious about the ceremony, and you talked about the seeds being planted. What were those seeds from the ceremony that were planted?
Yeah, I'm still um trying to fathom that myself. But part of the ceremony, it is okay. There's multi layers to it. One is there's also prophecy with the Kala chakra and Shambhala, and it's linked with um, Indian prophecies as well, and which is interesting. And that is so in the Indian mythologies, there is something known as Dashavata, that there have been there's 10 avatars. That avatar is Sanskrit word for like a like incarnation of God, supreme of that universal intelligence into a form on this planet. And in their mythology, yeah, Buddha was one of them, Krishna was one, and in fact, yeah, yeah, and there's also a future one that hasn't landed yet, and there is a name for this being that is known as Kalki, and this Kalki is, and this um, legend is also part of the Kala chakra mythology in Shambhala. Kalki is in fact the king of Shambhala, and there's it's not just one king. It's there's a number of Kalkis um, that I've discovered. So yeah, and I'm not sure whether you've heard of this prophecy, but the prophecy, the Shambhala prophecy, is that yeah, there will come a time where it feels like barbarians are dominating the world, where uh, it becomes freedom becomes harder, more challenging, and and at this time, the Hulky will rise up and shine. They're like, well, it's not just Kalki, it's also the Bodhisattvas. So I discovered that in doing this Kalachakra initiation, one takes vows to become a bodhisattva, the bodhisattva vows. A bodhisattva is these vows. One of these vows is that you will return at the right time to fight the good fight. That's one interpretation.
Mhm.
They essentially, these bodhisattvas are like time travelers. They they reincarnate time after time, and they are here to really just uplift
Mm.
um, the consciousness in this world. And and so
Do you
yeah,
feel
and
like
that's
that's your role? Do you feel that that's your role, is to uplift the consciousness of the world?
yeah, I feel drawn to remind myself and people around me. Um, and there is it's an interesting one, and that one it's very much a middle path. Um, we've been drawn into either sides of the story, and this is where the story comes back into it again. You know, we in our lives we find ourselves pretty much living someone else's story, It's either the narrative of the modern world, of society, or the narrative of our parents, or the narrative of our friends. But whose narrative are we living? And maybe it's time to find our own story and write our own script to the story. And that's one of the things that I would love to encourage people to do, is to find their own truth and their own story, and not buy in to the other narratives that are out there at the moment.
Mm. Yeah, I hear the connection between wanting that for others and how you're talking about have a gap year, go out, explore the world. And I know for me personally, I'll think something, so much is possible. And then I'll spend time with certain people and be like, oh, wow, my world just changed through spending an hour with that, for example, these podcasts, right? And just conversing with you. It's like, oh, wow, the pilgrimage, the call of the pilgrimage, and the walking, and the, even creating your own shoes to walk in, right? That's really creating your own story, right? And your own experience, because you created those moccasins so you could feel the earth, and then that totally changed your experience. And just a little side note, I have multiple pairs of barefoot shoes, right? And I started getting them at the beginning of the year. Totally changed my experience of walking, because and my sense of self has expanded because I'm so aware of my feet, whereas before they were squashed in these regular shoes. And I found, and how I ended up there was I kept getting calf injuries, and over summer I wasn't wearing shoes very much, and then when I came back to Sydney and started wearing my trainers again, calf injuries came back. And so it's the shoes. And so anyway, barefoot shoes. But one of the great experiences, I'm now so connected to my feet, and it's a more whole body experience walking.
Yeah, yeah, walking is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really loving it at the moment, and yeah, I'm about to go on another pilgrimage pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
That's another story.
Do you want to share where you're going? You don't have to, of course.
Right. Yeah, so I'm feeling drawn, actually, uh, to go on the Kota, which is a pilgrimage in Japan. Never been to Japan, but it's always been there,
Mm.
uh, on my periphery, because I love Aikido, practice Aikido, and I'm fascinated with how the Japanese also integrate the sacred into the everyday. And that's something that I'm passionate about too, and I feel drawn to those cultures that do that and have done that for centuries, being able to integrate the sacred into the everyday.
Mm.
That's tantra, right? That's real tantra.
Uh, and so I'm thinking about the work that you do right now. And so how does the work that you're doing now, well, what is it firstly, so we can share with the audience what you're doing, and how does that integrate the sacredness and your sense of purpose, sense of self?
Yeah, yeah, that's a whole other. So I'm currently working as a financial advisor, and there are some synchronicities here with the Kala chakra as well, because one of the exercises that we did in the Kala chakra was to um, align with a particular tribe and or a family group, and each family group has a particular purpose, right? And the particular tribe that I found myself in, um, interestingly, the purpose was around wealth and money, and I didn't know this previously, but yeah, I've found myself in this space of money and financial advising. It wasn't something that I left school and thought, oh, I want to grow up and be a financial advisor. It was just something that I naturally found myself in. Um, and yeah, for me, um, one of the first books that I wrote is called The Yoga of Wealth. And for me, that is about bridging these two different worlds where money can tend to be used for, I guess, greed and domination, power, and we can see, the world that we're currently in at the moment. The way that money has been used has really destroyed this planet and created so much pollution. And so, uh, for me, I wanted to bring more consciousness to the way that we use money. And that's what the intention of my first book, The Yoga of Wealth, was about. It's about bringing consciousness to money. And so yeah, so what I specialize in financial advisory is around how we can invest ethically with more consciousness. And so I've been doing that over the last 10 years, and it's been an interesting space to watch as it evolves. And because just like anything, the, the consciousness is evolving in that space too. And I can see it's yeah, over the last few years, it's been mm, there's been some questions about the I guess what makes a certain investment ethical. And that's what is required. We need to understand more. We need to become more aware, more conscious of money, how we use money. And so, yeah, I'm continuing that journey as well. And I'm really excited. Like for me, in many ways, the investing at what is available to the 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 average punter out there, it's hard to really label that as ethical investing. Um, there's Because for the average punter for it to be accessible to the average punter, it needs to be listed on the stock exchange in some way. Um, but with those, there are limitations with that, and so yeah, I'm diving deeper into what makes investing ethical and how we can really help people in need. And yeah, because a lot of these investments that are available to what I call the retail space, or what's known as the retail space, um, it is questionable. I mean, like each of these companies are still producing a certain level of pollution. Are they actually helping planet? How do we know? How do we measure whether or not they are um, it's been a positive impact on the planet or not? And so this is the area of, I guess, conflict at the moment as well.
Mhm.
Because in order to simplify it and measure uh, whether or not something is considered ethical or not, we have to all agree upon a measurement. What is the measurement we're going to use? And so the measurement that has been agreed upon to use is what's called carbon emissions, what's known as carbon emissions, and that represents pollution. And however, there are limitations with any sort of I guess framework, and and at the moment, there are. It's trying to find the best framework to measure the outcomes that these companies are claiming to say that they do, and so there's a whole space in this ethical investing that is still growing and unfolding, but it's fundamentally it's about proving that a particular company is doing what they say they they're going to be doing, and
Mm-hmm.
how do you do that? And we've got to find particular measurements or ways of measuring or tracking what they're doing,
Yeah.
and that's just where sustainability reports come into it and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a particular petrol station that's green and yellow that's just near me, and have rebranded as environmentally, proactive, solar panels on the roof, but then they're still one of the biggest polluters in the world, despite what their advertising and what their policies say. I hear things, they're still creating mass pollution. And then also, there's so many variables, right? It's what's good for the planet. Sure, our emissions might be low, but who are our employees when we get down to the base level of the mining, where it's coming from? Who are the children, the adults that are doing the mining? How is it taken care of? So big, just massive issues. And then all these variables are changing all the time. And it's such a melting pot of things that are happening. And how do you measure it? And then how do you keep across who's telling the truth and not telling the truth? But I want to come back to something that you talked about, money and consciousness. So my perception is, if I was if billions of people were consciously spending their money on what they wanted for the planet, right? And so in ethical things, if billions of people were doing that, then the forces that use greed, right, to continually suck the life out of the planet, they'd be forced to change.
That's what's been happening, and so, but this is one of the dilemmas, is okay. So it's multi-layered here. So we've got yeah. So the big companies are now starting to listen to what people want. Okay, and so they're starting to make these changes, and and this goes on to, some of the governments now are starting to go, right. Okay, we've heard that change needs to happen. We're going to use a particular framework, and this is our opportunity to do it. Um, and yes, so this is the interesting thing here. Okay, is now we've got some of these elites and some of these power um, holders of power now starting to change the narrative, or add interesting elements to the narrative, right? They're planting seeds of doubt into the field, and and so this is an interesting thing, because this is where the uh, people can get, if they're not really clear on who they are, and their, I guess, their purpose, their mission, people can get led astray by these other narratives that start popping up.
Mm.
and and so um and yes, so there are some other narratives that are popping up, um trying to, I guess, um I, who knows what they're trying to do, but ultimately, yeah, derail, I guess, they're trying to hold on to, I guess, their own power. And so yeah, this is ultimately the why. We got, like, for instance, the big oil companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, they um, that they've been controlling the narrative for a long time. And then when they um, essentially planting seeds around narrative, saying that climate change is not human created. So it's an interesting sort of segue. It's like, oh, hang on. Whereas for me, it's all about, okay, how do we reduce pollution? But yet these other players have started to go, oh, it's all about climate change not being humans didn't create climate change. So it's okay. Hang on a minute. So that's like a little Jedi mind trick here. It's
Mm-hmm.
starting to talk about distract with other issues and talk about science and all that sort of stuff, but actual no, I just want to reduce pollution on the planet. I just want to look after the environment. That's all I want to do.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's
Mm. Yeah, I get, it can be really confusing. And I'm somebody that really likes to look at both sides, or all 10 sides, whatever the shape of this discussion happens to be. I want to know. Like, oh, well, what's this person saying? What's this person? And then come up with a decision. And for me, when I'm on an aeroplane and I look down, particularly when I fly over Victoria, right? And I look down and I see almost forestless territory, trees just gone for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. I'm like, this is not right. This is not right. And then when I'm driving around Tasmania and there's all this farmland, and there's the ancient forests in Tasmania are absolute mind blowing. And then I go to the regenerated forests, and the difference is between going to a cathedral and going to a demountable. It's horrifying to see. And so I know in myself that's not right. And there can be all these arguments happening, but I know in my heart this is wrong. We need to replant the planet. We need to really, be nurturing the land so that we're back on track to keep giving this planet to our kids and to ourselves. And yeah, my guide is my heart in that one. And I'm just like, no, this is not
see,
right.
100%, and that's what it comes back to. The mind, we can be easily led astray because it's always, or it's about knowing something, knowing more, and um, and who's right, who's wrong. It's a world of duality in the mind. Whereas coming into the heart is really, we get a sense for what is right here in our hearts and who we are, and what our values are, and that is what guides me more than anything, is my heart space. So yeah, uh it's definitely an interesting journey what we're experiencing at the moment, with, I guess, the division that's been created um, in this world. It's a fit for me. It feels very much up here, you know, trying to be right, and drilling down to the detail to prove that we are right or you're wrong.
Mm,
It's
mm.
it's an interesting one.
Yeah. Well, and I hear the argument that, there's natural fluctuations in the heat of the sun. The sun isn't just burning at 10 squillion degrees, right? It has a little fluctuation in there which can impact the earth. But then when I'm on the airplane or I'm driving through a national park and then I come out into land that's just been cleared and it's just rocks left, I know that we're harming the planet. So,
And it just comes back to that. And so yeah, I'm really excited about something else that's unfolding in this space of money. I'm actually in the process of putting together my own fund called the Zen Capital, and
mhm.
it's around specific aims. Like one is around affordable housing, and the other is around energy microgrids, being able to be self-sufficient with your own energy as well. So, in that way, I know what the outcomes are going to be, and that it's directly going to have a positive impact on certain people. So, yeah, that's the direction I'm heading towards now.
Mm. Yeah, I like it. I'm conscious of time, but I've got one question. I remember when my perception used to be ethical investing wasn't as profitable as just going with the the normal go-to companies and systems. What would you say about that?
Yeah, well, that wasn't the case in the um, 5 to 10 years leading up to COVID. Interestingly, not no, the 5 to 10 years leading up to the Ukraine war, actually, and this is where we've seen the powers that be trying to control the narrative again. Since the Ukraine war, we've seen the fossil fuel energy supply chain being constricted, and we've seen the price of petrol rise, and so it's um, and so any companies or any investments in that space has now gone up, and so just recently the companies that are aiming to make a positive difference are not performing as well as some of the bigger, I guess, more established companies. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Essentially, to to change the way that we are living and doing business on this planet, it's a fundamental change. And so these some of the bigger companies that are saying that they are changing, it's going to be much slower for them to make the changes. They're aiming for 2050, right? They're going to
Mhm.
make these changes by 2050, whereas it's the smaller, more innovative companies that are actually coming up with new, amazing technologies that are what we should be investing and putting our money towards. Now, unfortunately, it's the smaller companies that are find high inflation really challenging because they don't have like deep pockets like the bigger companies do, and so yeah. So at the moment, the more I guess innovative companies for a better future are finding it a little bit challenging, but it's probably a great time to buy in
Mm.
to these companies
Mhm.
because I'm a really big believer in mega trends. And if like the first great mega trend was obviously oil and steel, and if you had a bought in back then, you became multimillionaires. And then the same with companies like Netflix, buying there at a low, all of a sudden, even Zoom, right?
Yeah, yeah.
um, spotting a megatrend, but ultimately the megatrends around reducing pollution, being able to create affordable housing, and um, energy, sustainable renewable energy sources, all those sorts of things are the way of the future. And even though right now they may not be performing as well, they will in the future, and they have in the past as well. It's just right now, interesting what's going on with the power struggles.
Mm. Yeah, and I imagine the challenges that those smaller companies are facing now, it makes them more robust for the future because they have to learn how to survive now.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
It's, it's,
Mm. Wow, what a chat.
We've covered everything.
We have. I absolutely love this chat. Really love this chat. I've been totally absorbed, and I'm wondering, what's the hardest decision do you think that you had to make on this journey so far?
Hmm. It's the hardest decision. Yeah, it is around staying true to myself and my journey, as well as so many distractions can come in. So many distractions. Even it can be hard, particularly with the conflicting narratives that are around at the moment, to know um, what's the right path. So that's challenging, but it's what's challenging around that too is not falling into that same debate, because really that's just playing that same game up here, tit for tat. I'm right, no, you're wrong. No, gotta stay here and be true to me, and um, just by being true to me, that will actually ripple out to uh, where I live and the people I connect with. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, Adrian Nathaniel, thank you for coming on Beyond Turning Points.
Thanks, Ash. It's always great talking to you. I love the chats that we have, and I love the natural wisdom that comes from your being as well.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. Well, it's I'd love to have you back on the podcast again and explore things even more, because I did have talking about men's work written down, but we didn't get there this time. So, well, we'll finish it up there, and thank you.
Thanks so much, Ash. Have an awesome day.
Yeah, thank you.